and on the same page, but we are so thrilled that you guys were all able to join us for our first ever Fashion Africa Open for Business Globally think tank. And what better way to launch it than during Social Media Week Lagos, which is also the very first time that it's taking place on the African continent. So joining us today, we've got some amazing members of the design community. Straight from Lagos, Nigeria, we have Lisa Folawio from Jewel by Lisa. She obviously needs no introduction because people know Lisa from Italy to New York to Lagos and back. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. And also joining us right here in New York. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see her beautiful face, but we have Jacqueline Ituarte from Mayette. Mayette is an amazing brand that recently launched just less than 1 year ago, and already they've made waves globally through Barney's, internationally as well, and they have a strong manufacturing component in Kenya. So they too just know how to draw inspiration locally and also translate for a very global consumer base. So as you know, all week we're going to be talking about the challenges and the opportunities around our industry, around the global African fashion industry. So today we're starting off with a discussion on how to draw inspiration from local cultures while still translating that for a global consumer base. Tomorrow we're going to speak to the makers and we're going to have a discussion called Made in Africa. Following that is the business of blogging. Thursday, stay tuned for a master class, and on Friday we're rounding it out with a gang of folks who are into creative collaboration. So you're actually going to see Jewel by Lisa's team coming back. So just to kick things off, just also a quick note, Stella Jean is caught up in a market appointment. So as you know, this is the business of African fashion. So these things happen. We're rescheduling with her. So you'll still have the opportunity to speak with her live and join the conversation. So don't worry, we're going to speak with her at a later date this week. And Lozamali Ambo should be joining us shortly as well. So just to kind of kick things in, I'm filling in for our moderator momentarily. We have the lovely Mahalia Durandami. She's an editor over at Vogue Italia, and she's just having some internet connectivity issues, but she'll be on just in a minute. So I want to start with you, Lisa. Now, you know, you started designing first with Ankara wax prints, and that was essentially your signature. And from there, you've really been able to break into just a very global and mainstream consumer. How about you just spend a little time talking us through your design process, you know, how you still integrate local Nigerian culture, but you still have a global perception? Because oftentimes you look at your designs and it's not even obvious as to where your inspiration is coming from.
Right. Yes. Like you said, Jewel by Lisa, we started with the Ankara fabric, which I still work with today because I say it's my first love. But I think I'll take you back a few years ago when we started, and the idea was to work with the Ankara, which was a very familiar fabric in this part of the world, and to make it modern which is what I wanted to do, because we were used to seeing the Ankara in different forms, and that is in the traditional form mostly. And I thought that this is a beautiful fabric, beautiful print, and why not make it to what I would want to wear? And so this is how Jewel by Lisa came about, and I've maintained that through the years, because with everything that I've made, and of course with time you develop and you start to think outside of the box and all that. But what I try to always stick to is to create modern pieces from my call it my more traditional background, or what we have locally. Sorry, excuse me. what we have. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I have a lot going on here. Sorry.
Oh, no worries at all. And you know, this is the reality of being a working
Yeah,
mom.
my kids, sorry, I'm so sorry. I have homework on one side. I have my daughter who's just come home from lessons.
Hey,
You know,
cutie.
this is from it's an interview, okay? I'll be with you in a second. Okay. Yes. So I was saying, what we've done over the years, or what I've tried to do over the years, is to um, maybe call it just make modern pieces. I always say, I think that even though I'm here in Nigeria, West Africa, I do not limit myself to what is supposedly fashion here, which is more the traditional African wear. I think that every single one of us, I mean, today I'm wearing a denim shirt. You know, we are we fashion is fashion, and I think that for me it's important to create from what I have or who I am, what I see as fashion, and whether it is modern, whether it is more global, whether it is seen as Nigerian, it's seen as African, it's seen as more for me it's just how I think I would, what I see as fashion is what I keep on creating, and that's it really.
Yeah, that I mean that it's exactly as you said, you know, you really design for the modern woman. And a lot of it is just drawing from your own personal desires and translating that into your consumer, which obviously you do beautifully. So now let's just kind of switch gears. I just also want Jacqueline to introduce herself and also share who you are, share a bit about Mayette, and as the jewelry designer, share more about your design process.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, so I'm a jewelry designer from Mayette. It's a wonderful company, and we've had probably only about 3 seasons now, but we've done really good. And we've had a really great reception, which is really, really nice in the press and editorial and stores. And for us, you know, ironically, it's not so much, even though we are a fashion company and a product-based company, we don't approach it first by style or product necessarily. The company was founded on sort of helping people around the world. So
Mm,
really, the starting point for us is people, and people somewhere that have a traditional craft
yeah.
that should be celebrated, or we think should be celebrated, or we think we can work with. And so we kind of try to go deep, like find a nugget somewhere, and then sort of try to build with those people, with infrastructure and training. And then so, you know, so it starts with the person and the people and sort of like I say a culture or a craft, and then we sort of build on that, and then that brings us to the materials that the people are using locally. You know, it's not so much that we had to design horn or horn necklace, you know, that we just had to do that because that's our style or that's our thing. We really work backwards, so then we see what materials are available to us, and then comes the design. um, which, you know, is I can't just decide from the top that it has to be something that I want to make, because there are well, not limits, but there are choices that need to be made within a framework that can be celebrated in a really beautiful way. So it's really kind of working with the people and what they're available, what they can do at any given time, and then sort of work with the materials and then sort of design into that, and kind of make it something that both they can do and something that we would want, and that would resonate with our marketplace and the people that we connect with and sell to. And so on top of it too, as far as the design process, um, again, sort of like working with a synergistic kind of approach. It's really what they are capable of doing. For, you know, we support our artisans with training, and we are slowly building facilities in many places. One in Kenya, but it really is, you know, to do it right, it's a long process, to hire the right people and to train and buy the machinery. So at any given time, what we do is really based on where we are. So a lot of the stuff we do, I try to make it very simple, as far as clean lines, which I think resonates with, again, like we were just discussing earlier, our customers. Sort of, it's more modern. And I think that, there's also a history. I was just at the African Art Village in Tucson for the GEM show, and there was beautiful, amazing carvings. And it just reminded me of how that resonates with what we do. With beautiful, like, sculptures I bought. I'm going to put them on my Instagram later on today, from a woman from Senegal, and this amazing sculpture, actually, that I'm going to have sent to me from Zimbabwe. But it just reminded me of how it's not so much that I have to hold myself back to make something clean lines. There is a beautiful sort of history of that that I've seen and I really like.
Cool. So, I love the step-by-step process that you just went through. And I think that's very meaningful for a lot of people who are looking to manufacture on the ground and also draw inspiration locally. Because I like how you started with where you want to manufacture, where you want to design. You started with the people.
Yeah.
And from there, you took a look at the crafts, their capabilities, and what resources were available. And then ultimately, that's what led you to your design decisions. And I think that's very important when you are looking to draw inspiration from certain cultures, especially if you have a very specific place that you do want to work within. Oftentimes, you do have to make sure that what you're creating fits within the limitations and possibilities, as opposed to vice versa, because then it just makes the design process more challenging. So thanks for sharing that. I think that step-by-step matrix is something that's very, very important to take hold of.
Thank you.
So I want to go back to Lisa. Now, with your most recent collection, I absolutely adore it. I mean, it goes without saying that Fulani earrings are my very favorite.
No.
Like this ode to Fulani, I thought was just gorgeous because you created your own custom print based off of something that's inherent within our own culture. And that's really kind of taking this African inspiration to another level, because oftentimes people don't look at things outside of the fashion or textile realm to then come up with something different. So what was your thought process behind that? Why Fulani earrings? Why this custom print in particular?
Well, for this collection, the spring summer collection, it was for me. I always, every collection I work on, I always make sure, I always say it's all about what I'm about. So I bring it back home. And the last season, it was, it's just me. It's just the way I think and things that I felt hadn't been explored. And I always had this interest in the Fulani. I always thought, oh my God, they're so beautiful. And if you look at some images, you find that they do have a really strong sense of style. And I thought, my God, it would be such a match made in heaven if I could in some way kind of merge Joe by Lisa and my idea of the Fulani. And with that, I did do my research, and I think that for me, what caught my eye were the earrings. And I do know you love the earrings because you talk about Fulani earrings a lot. Yeah, and the earrings and the calabashes, which we had on some of the prints. And these were the images that really caught my attention, and I decided to then design my own prints along those lines. We talked about the Ankara earlier and how from Ankara we have started to design our own prints. And I think that, you know, as much as I still work with the Ankara fabric, but I think that it's very important for me to, even apart from design, express myself in my fabric and what I am thinking and how I am feeling for that season. And so people ask me, oh, why instead of staying with the Ankara, which we still work with, why have you started to print or design your own fabric? And I think that for me, how much better can I express myself if not in my fabric as well as the design? And so this is how the Fuller collection came about. I wanted to, in my way, sort of give some sort of applause to the Fulani tribe. And I think it's also a tribe that maybe in Nigeria we don't really celebrate. I find that we have the three main tribes, and which are of course the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Hausa, and I felt that the Fulani, to me, needed some sort of recognition. I'm sure they weren't asking me for that, but that was just how I was feeling, and I kind of went with all that, and even in designing the pieces, of course I took notice of their garments and their cuts and things, and I tried to merge that with, again, my own aesthetic, for the season, or and that's how the Fula collection came about.
Yeah, and it came about beautifully. So congratulations.
I'm glad you like it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for those of you guys who are joining, I don't know if you noticed, but we've just got Loza Molly Ambo on board with us here. So I just want to shift gears a little. Hi, Loza, and welcome. Live from Abidjan, straight to your living room. This is really a global chat, and we are loving it. So just to catch you up to speed, Loza, we're speaking with Lisa from Jewel by Lisa and Jacqueline from Mayette, and they just went over a bit of their design process, how they draw inspiration, and Jacqueline shared with us a wonderful step-by-step process because she too uses local resources and crafters, and Lisa also shared her process in translating local culture into a custom textile. So, your most recent Autumn/Winter 12 collection, needless to say, was a hit. I mean, the way you used that kente textile was absolutely stunning, and it was very, very innovative. So if you could also just introduce yourself and share a bit about your thought process and your design process behind that recent collection.
Okay, sure. Hi guys, first of all, and I'm sorry I was late. We had like some internet connection problems, but everything's good now.
Awesome, no worries.
So with the collection, I guess I really was fond of everything Kente for a very long time. I was very inspired by the fabric and always wanted to use it some kind of way that was more modern than what we're accustomed to see it. In Ivory Coast, Kente is used for wedding ceremonies, traditional wedding ceremonies.
Oh, I think we've lost her. Okay, well, we just lost Loza, but I anticipate she'll be joining back again once she restores her internet connection. So we're going to hold that thought, and when she comes back, she'll continue talking about how she's been using kente cloth. Oh, actually, she's right back. You're back. We lost you. Is your volume up? Hey, Loza, is your volume up? Because we can't hear you.
Hello?
Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you. We couldn't hear anything you just said, so if you can rewind.
Okay, sorry, because I guess it's muted.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, so I don't know when it actually cut off, but
we last heard you speak about kente and the traditional use of kente for weddings, typically.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've always admired the fabric, and I really wanted to use it, but I guess the challenge was to make it useful because it's also very thick and heavy, and it's not easy to come out with a practical design with it. So I guess to me the simplest way to use it was with jackets and vests, which I came out with in the autumn winter collection that you saw. And so I guess the kente was my original inspiration, and then everything that went on around it, I kind of went sourcing to see how it could work with other fabric, other prints, and then it was a lot about colors and color combination also, and that's how I came out with the collection.
And so I noticed that for spring summer, you're not using kente, you're using another type of material. What kind of material is that?
Yeah, I went a completely different way with that. I used baule fabric. It's also woven, and it's from the baule group in Ivory Coast.
Okay, so
It's actually a very small village not far from Abidjan, and
gotta love the internet. Well, I'm sure we'll have Loza back again shortly. So, in the meantime, let's actually just throw it back over to you, Jacqueline.
Mhm.
So, one of the things I've noticed with your collections, you use a lot of brass and a lot of horn. Now, I know that obviously you start on the ground. Hey, Loza, we're gonna pull you back in shortly, okay?
all
So
right.
Jacqueline, you start on the ground and you really look at some of the resources that are available, and then you design your collection. So just based on what you've seen in Kenya and based on some of the other places within Africa that you're interested in manufacturing, are there any other materials that you think you can really develop a cohesive collection and continue to push your brand forth with using? Because I think what you've done with the cow horn is gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous, and we're kind of curious to see what's next.
Yeah, I think, we're really staying, like, for the short term. I think it's really perfecting working on the facilities. We put a lot of work into sort of perfecting things, but it could actually be done more in the production process more efficiently the first time around. So I think our focus is more sort of perfecting sort of like the carving and the finishing and the how it matches with the brass and the assembly and also the hand we use. We found this lovely gentleman that we adore, and we're building him process of building him a home for him and his 10 kids and creating a
Mm.
workshop, and he's just so sweet. He's like the nicest man ever, him and his wife. Um, so we're kind of building a facility with him so his hand poured casting so it can be safe, so it could have less pitting, so there's less rejection and work and time on his son's work with him. So it's really as far as like working in the future. I think to stay within our materials as it is now, not so much like running around trying to find different things, but really trying to perfect the actual materials that are used right now and also helping the people work more efficiently. So yeah, I mean, we get a lot of the horn from I think Uganda and some other places. So I think it's kind of making sure we get the right components that we need. But yeah, I mean, we're open. I mean, that's the thing too. If someone came to us and said there's this amazing beading in another part, we would definitely, as long as we could integrate it aesthetically and we could work with the people and the people would want to work with us, because it's not always so simple because it's a lot of units all of a sudden possibly, and it has to be certain quality. So the people that we find also have to want to work and kind of grow and kind of have that sort of idea that they want to kind of do more or grow. So yeah, I think there's a possibility, and we're so open to doing many things, but I think we're kind of just focusing on perfecting and working with the people right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that oftentimes comes up in conversations about, drawing inspiration locally yet translating it for a global consumer is how to accurately give credit to where your source of inspiration is coming from. So, I know you guys all in a very meaningful way, pull inspiration, whether it's from your Fulani tribe, whether it's from the textiles, whether it's from the resources. If we can just go one by one and kind of explain how you even incorporate that into your brand, because I think all three of you are exemplary for truly giving credit to where your inspiration is coming from, as opposed to kind of the other end, appropriating cultural inspiration. So what are some of those ways to make sure that you are actually laying credit to where you're driving your inspiration? Let's start with you, Lisa.
Um, well, oh, I mean, I don't know. This is it's a weird question because for me, I'm just inspired by Nigeria, what I have here, and your question is what? How am I giving back? What is the
Well, no, not how you're giving back, but just how do you credit where your inspiration is coming from in a way that makes it very authentic. So with your Ode to Fulani collection, you essentially told the story of the Fulani people and how that translates into your designs. And, on the flip side, some people might just draw inspiration from the Fulani and,
yeah.
say it's just their own, thing that they've contextualized. So how do you make sure that you're in fact giving credit back to where your inspiration is coming from?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I said before, this is who I am, and I am a Nigerian in West Africa, and even though I try to make modern pieces, and my aesthetic might be clean and more classic compared to what is traditional in to us in our the fashion or our garments here, but all the time, it's very important that people know that this is who I am and this is where I'm from. And so in every collection that I have done, even though I may have a modern interpretation of whatever it is I'm going with, I always bring it back home. I mean, we talked about the Fulani, and even going back, because I started with the Ankara fabric, which even though there is the argument today, if saying is it really African or is it brought in? But whatever the case is, it's a fabric that has been is loved by us and has been here for too many years that we can claim. We have some claim to it. But what I'm saying is that even I started working with that fabric, which I absolutely love, and every other fabric that I have designed myself, my custom prints have always bore likeness to the Ankara fabric. It's very important that I keep it modern but still traditional, because for me, Jewel by Lisa was all about the Ankara and the color and the print and the texture, and what we are, and what Africa is, and we love our color, we love our print, and we say at Jewel by Lisa, well, I say I'm a Prince girl. I feel that these things bring it back home for me. Now, I cannot decide, or I cannot determine how people view that or what they want to see, but I know that when I am designing, my inspiration, everything that I put through the whole process is all about what is true to me, what is real to me, who I am. And I think that is Nigerian, and that's the first thing that for me, I'm not shouting, oh, I'm Nigerian, but I want you to understand that, and this is where everything's come from. When I started Jewel by Lisa, I started with the Nigerian wax before I started even working with the Hollandaise wax, which is the fabric which we keep on arguing about. It's very important that, and for me, it was very important that I started with that, because I've always wanted it to be about who I am, who we are. And so, but then again, I'm not going to force that down your throat. I want you to view this however you want. This is fashion to me. But then it's me, it's Nigerian, and I think that if you ever came across my inspiration, or you read anything, you will definitely see and know that my inspiration comes from here. The passion within me is birthed here. So everything about my collections for me says Nigeria, West Africa, and that's it really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Even though your collections obviously appeal to such a global consumer, it still does speak in Yell Nigeria, which I
I
appreciate.
hope so.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I hope
And it's
so.
nice to be able to say it without saying it or shouting it. And I think
I
that's really
I
what it
guess,
takes.
right? I guess. And at the end of the day, I think that as important as it is that, Joe by Lisa is a Nigerian brand, an African brand, but at the end of the day, I think that sometimes there are too many, should I call them, what do I call them, like boundaries? We like to, it's fashion, you see.
Yeah.
I decided to become a designer because I wanted to influence fashion. I wanted to have a say in how people viewed fashion. And it just happens that I am this Nigerian girl, and everything you see from me, that you have to see Nigeria in me. So whatever direction I'm coming from, whatever, and I feel that because it is who I am, and I put myself in my collections, you will see that anyway. So that for me, it's just being true to who I am, and I don't even know if it's about being true to who I am. It's who I am, and so that just has to come out through my designs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to actually go over and take a couple questions from Twitter. We've got some folks who have some amazing questions, so thank you guys so much. Keep them coming. First thing, so we've got a question from Oluchi Nwoke, and she wants to know, what is true African fashion? Is it being made on the continent? Is it the designer being African? I think this is a question that we all kind of grapple with. What does it mean? And I don't necessarily think that there's one definition. I think everyone is certainly entitled to their own sense of what it is. But when we speak of African design, what do you guys think? What comes to mind, and how would you convey it? I want to hear some of your thoughts, Loza, and then we'll go over to Jacqueline.
Sure. I don't think, just like you said, I don't think there's one African fashion. Africa is still a country. So, I mean, every culture within every country has their own tradition and their own way of expressing themselves with clothing, whether it's through traditional events or everyday lives. There's a different style that you can see throughout. I think a lot of people mistaken the Ankara print, for instance, as African fashion, but I think it's so broad. Like it's interpreted in different ways, whichever country you visit. So I think that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. The continent has so many different cultures and peoples, and just everything that influences culture itself. It's so hard to define, and even from a generational standpoint, I'm pretty confident that my parents would define African fashion quite differently than myself, quite differently from my younger cousins as well. So I agree, and I really appreciate that answer. Any thoughts on that, Jacqueline, yourself? You guys have really done an amazing job with getting it on the ground and drawing inspiration locally. But would you describe what you create as African fashion or African design, or is it just well-made product?
Well, I mean, a little bit of both, and I think that Lisa and Lazo living there probably have a much more credible sort of response to that. But I would say, I agree with you that it could be generational, it could be where it's made, it could be where it's sourced from, possibly more credibly the first two than necessarily the last one. But I would say, and as far as my goes, we don't claim we are making African fashion or African products. We really claim to, or do work with artisans that are amazing in any part of the world. And, it isn't so much like we've made this African thing and we're claiming we're an African brand. It's that we celebrate and love African artisans that we've met, and we integrate them into beautiful products. And like, for example, a necklace we made, it's sometimes, I mean, for the most part, the stuff we're making in Africa is wholly made there, but like it's an integration. We had something, part of a component of a necklace made in Italy, and part of a component necklace made in Colombia, and then we mixed it together, and another thing we made in Indonesia, the metal part, and we mixed it together. So it's a celebration of African artisanship and artisans, but it's also a kind of bringing together of a lot of people in any given product. So yeah, I don't think we lay claim to that, so I don't know that I have the exact answer to that, but we celebrate it and we love it and people love it. So, and as far as your other question, which is kind of related to this sort of a transparency or a credit given, I mean, I think our whole company is based on that. There's artisan videos. We send amazing cinematographers to, places that we work in Kenya and Africa, and created these amazing, videos. It's not a brand video. It's not like it's about the designer. It's really about, celebrating the people. So I think our whole company really points back to artisans, and everything we make, we, say where it's from. So I don't know. Again, so it's just for us a celebration, not so much we're laying claim to it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer, Jacqueline, because, when I think of Mayette, exactly what you said, every product really celebrates African artistry and craftsmanship, and even down to the videos that you produce. I think that's just such a great way to give credit to where credit is due, to really allow people to enter your world and go on the journey of seeing where the product is made, who's doing the making, and how you're drawing inspiration. So really just a very pointed answer to that question, how do you give credit where credit is due? Take your customer on the journey with you. And that can be done through fashion films. That can be done, Loza, you have a beautiful blog called LM Creative, and you take us on a journey into your world as well through your photography. I mean, I feel like I'm there with you in Abidjan throughout the process. Lisa, you've come up with beautiful fashion films as well. Even within this niche, I think you were kind of one of the first that really, really set forth with your fashion films seasons and seasons ago. But again, that's such an easy yet beautiful and branded way to really take your customer on that journey and truly say, you know what, this is what we're about. This is where we're drawing the inspiration from, and we're not pretending to be anything we're not. And that's really the transparency that you spoke of, Jacqueline. So we've got some more questions coming. Folks are excited and tweeting away. And I'm going to read a question for you, Lisa. In particular, we've got, you know what, I'm going to actually choose the same person, but it's such a good question again. So we've got another question from you. Lisa, have you considered going into producing African-inspired jewelry? So you've done, you have clothing down pat. You even have home textiles. I know recently you've got the lipstick going on. I can't wait to get into that. But what about jewelry? Are you going to really dive deep into that product category?
Well, jewelry. We definitely have looked at jewelry. I mean, I'm no jewelry maker or anything, but we have been talking. We have been talking to a jewelry designer, and we might be collaborating soon to make pieces, just little pieces. It's nothing carved in stone yet, so I don't want to say too much. But it is something that we have looked into, and hopefully we will have a collaboration very soon. So.
Well, I love the sound of that. You guys have this collaboration thing down pat. I mean, it's like season after season, there's another amazing collaboration, and that's that's also part of how we have to move the industry forward. Because when you get a set of amazing minds together, you just work wonders, right? So we're excited to see. We're not going to jinx you, but we are excited to see what that collaboration may be about.
Yes.
Now, so I want to touch upon African wax print for a little bit, because I know that you started, Lisa, you started with African wax print. You really branded yourself as kind of the princess of bedazzled prints, and now you've kind of gone and really pushed the envelope into your own custom prints and kind of strayed away. And it makes sense. There's no point or no reason in pigeonholing yourself. But I just want us to see if we can discuss how designers can still utilize African wax prints and traditional textiles. Loza, you'll be great to speak on this. But really kind of push the boundaries of tradition and still design for that contemporary person. I think oftentimes you see a lot of designers who kind of rest their heels, shall I say, on creating with African wax print and saying this is a great garment, when it just might be like an A-line skirt or a shift skirt, but there's no true design around it. Now, how do you just utilize wax print, utilize kente, utilize wovens for what they are? Beautiful materials that are steeped in tradition, but still create a well-constructed, well-designed garment.
Uh, can I go? Or
Absolutely, please.
oh, well, I mean, you said many things. You said construction is very important. And I always say with my team, I say it's all in the detail. You know, I think that you can just about work with any type of fabric, whether it's the African wax or you're working with silk or, shapes and forms remain quite the same, really, in design. And I think for me, it's about the detail. It's about uh, the mixing of prints. It's about the cut of the garment. It's um, it's about that little added detail that just makes uh, changes an A-line skirt to something else, even though it still remains an A-line skirt. I think that it's also the fusing of maybe the African wax and another type of fabric. So I think that there are different ways that you can create amazing pieces, more contemporary pieces, even if you're still working with the African wax, which I for forever would probably will keep on working with, and so yeah, so maybe construction, design, detail, and I don't know, that's it for me really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may add something, I agree with Lisa, and also I think that, for instance, for me, I think it's about reinventing. It's about, what have we seen done with wax so far, and how can I make it like approach it a new way, I think. And I think if you can see it in the collection from the autumn winter 2013, it's really about how can I push it to the next level, or how can I push it towards a new direction than what we've seen before.
Absolutely. And I think that actually perfectly takes us into our next question. We've got this question coming in from Nubian Human. Thank you so much for contributing to the conversation. So Nubian Human wants to know, how do we ensure that modern African fashion has a presence in the future marketplace? And I think that ties beautifully into what we're saying now as far as how to create for the modern day woman. All of you have had some experience with retailing, some, various experience actually. With Mayette, you guys launched right into Barney's. Lisa, you guys were on Moda Operandi. Loza, you're one of our beloved stockists, and I know you're also getting into other retail markets. How can each of you just explain to some of our listeners just some of the tactics that you guys are employing to make sure that African designers and African inspired design, whichever way you go, still has a presence in the future of our marketplace? Jacqueline, can we start with you?
Sure. I think, there's so many components to a product or a brand being successful and long term. Of course, there's design, as we're talking about now. There's, quality, and there's sort of like, the story, I think, is important. I think what we work on and that we see, if I can speak from our own experience, is just, and this goes back to our sort of nonprofit training arm, is kind of really just ensuring that things are made well, because I guess I'm talking also sort of like the luxury customer. You did mention Moda Operandi and Barney. So I think it's just we're trying to be very vigilant, and that's why we're helping people and supporting them with, training and workshops, our friend Anton, and many other things that we're doing. That I think, for a discerning customer, if you want to, aside from the design that we've talked about, and everyone has an amazing inspirations and articulations and capacity for design clearly, and everyone is current and they understand what works in the marketplace clearly because it's resonating and people love it and it's selling. I think what we are working with is just really making it quality, if or as a customer really loves the thing over time and that it's made well, and because all the other things, we're all of us here are doing, pretty well. But I think for us, maintaining that is sort of, important, I think, for the long term.
Yeah, those are great points. And I think that's something that we also need to make sure that we're emphasizing. You started with design quality current of the season and a good story, you know. So you never once said that you're kind of resting your heels on, say, you know, um, if let's say made by Africa or made in Africa is what's trendy right now. You're not resting your heels on that because that's not what it's about. You're
Yep.
resting your heels on a well-made, well-designed product that has a strong story that almost just so happens to be linking back to Africa. And I think that's kind of the common thread we hear. You're not leading with Africa, you're leading with a good product.
Right.
Lisa or Loza, do either of you have any insights onto that or any sense
I
that you
think
want to share just as far as how we can still make sure that Africa and African design and Made in Africa still has a presence in the global marketplace?
yeah, well, I think what you said, that the story is very important in the process, and also to be able to have that loyal customer over time. I think to to stay current. I think that's very important.
I agree as well completely. You know, the story, the inspiration. I think also, sorry about my voice again. And I think, yes, to stay current and also, yeah, everything they've said, to know your customer and just to mostly stay current, I think, is what's important.
Yeah. So now we've got another question coming in. Let me see who the originator is because this question has been retweeted a few times, so it sounds like folks really want to know this. Who's it from? Yeah. Okay, so the same. Okay, Oluchi Onwoke again has a question. I think this is going to cause a little bit of controversy, but good controversy because it's all things that people want to know. So she's asking, how do you feel about US-based NGOs using African jewelry for fundraising? So everyone here on the panel, you guys are all for-profit businesses. None of you guys are operating a nonprofit business. You're simply creating a brand of apparel, of accessories, and bottom line, you're working with individuals on the ground and you're providing a level of sustainability. You're training, and this is something that actually goes the mile. It's not here today, gone tomorrow. So I think a lot of people want to know, you know, what are some of your thoughts around NGOs, other nonprofits who are simply using African jewelry? I don't know if it's biting on to what's a trend right now or biting on to something that seems trendy, but you know, maybe going left field or be doing something else differently for fundraising efforts. But any thoughts on that, on the sustainability, or even on just the credibility of that action?
I mean, I would offer to speak to that, Jacqueline from Mayette. I think, yeah, I mean, I've worked in nonprofits before and happened to have been an environmental nonprofit working with high fashion designers. But, you know, I definitely saw, what's the word, abuses and misappropriations and people not like doing what you think they should or promised. So that's kind of disheartening, and it's, you know, there's good and bad in the world everywhere, so I can't speak to everything. Um, but, you know, there are good people, and there are good people doing good things too. You know, it's up to people to kind of like do their research and kind of look into who they're giving their money to and ask questions. For us, you know, we have our nonprofit is directly connected to our company, and I see it every day, what goes on, and buying land and buying Anton a roof and buying machinery and picking out the machinery and the tools and the drill bits and, you know, the lease for the land and stuff. So, you know, for us, it's definitely going straight to all the artisans that we work with and helping them build facilities. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, I've seen it before. It's very sad, and you know, I wish people wouldn't. But I think people should, you know, just kind of ask questions and just kind of maybe try to be a part of the process.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
agree.
I
I
mean,
think it's important
transparency is definitely very key, and that's something
yeah.
that you guys do beautifully. Lowe's, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please jump in.
Oh no, I mean I agree. I think it's important to do the research because I mean that's a common thing that happens in with nonprofit organizations. I mean, there's so many. You don't know which ones are actually doing the work and which ones are actually taking advantage of the donation. So I think it's important to do the research.
And while I've got you, Loza, I want you to also share a little insight from your part, because I love what Jacqueline said as far as her design process. It starts with the people and it starts with the craft, and then from there they produce based on those possibilities and limitations. Now, Loza, you pretty much set up your team of workers from the ground up. So obviously you were going into this knowing that there are certain things that you can and cannot do. Now, what is that process like? We're going to touch on this in full length tomorrow, but you can also just share some of that insight as well.
I've started, like you said, I've started with people just going around and just talking and meeting women at local markets.
Mm-hmm. I think your connection froze for a moment, Loza.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
yeah,
she's coming back.
I'm always getting on and off. I think. Sorry about that. I think.
No worries. Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question again? I lost the train of thought.
Oh no. So. No worries at all. So I just wanted you to talk through just your process of setting up your team of workers on the ground and what that was like, knowing that there were some limitations around your manufacturing. Because obviously, again, you're producing product that has just a very, very unique aesthetic. I was so excited when I saw your vest in the flesh, the piping that you used, the structure, the rigidity. Now, what was that like taking the realm of their possibilities, now translating that into a global product? But that's something that you did on the ground. So it's not like you stepped into a factory or you went into a team of established workers already. And I know there are people who are tuning in who also want to know what it's like to be able to actually get on the ground. Where do they begin? How do they start with the manufacturing process?
Yeah, I think it's important to know what the people are actually capable of.
So we've lost you again, Loza, but when you come back, we'll have her finish up with that thought. So just to kind of rehash for folks that are joining in, I think we've brought you again.
Yeah, sorry, I have very bad connection right now. I don't know.
Oh, no worries.
In and out. But like I was saying, I think it's important to know.
You want to finish your thought?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. What I was saying is I think it's important to know what the people are actually capable of doing before starting a production. And I think that's kind of how I went about it. And I based myself on the skill levels to begin with, and then try to simplify the designs that I wanted to do. And we went on from there.
And Lisa, can you jump in on that as well? Because I know, initially when you started as well, you were really utilizing the local skills and the local craftsmanship to produce your products. So what was that like, just as far as knowing you had certain limitations, but there might have been more or less that you wanted to do?
Well, I still utilize my local craftsmen. The thing is, my tailors, I don't have a huge factory or anything here. I have a few number of tailors that I work with, who I've worked with from when Jewel by Lisa started, and I have a a huge team of beaters, because what we do is we hand embellish most of our garments. So yeah, we do have limitations to what they can do, and in terms of numbers, especially when you're a brand that is growing, and we know what manufacturing is here, production is here. Of course, we are limited to a certain extent, but I still work with my tailors, and I push them as far as they can go. Call it they train on the job, and my beaters as well, and I try and get, I always say, you know, we all have to start to think outside of the box, because, you know, the tailors, the beaters are probably used to a certain way of doing things, but what I try to do is re-educate them, challenge them, and just take it to the next level. I always say we're taking it to the next level and to the next level. The only thing, the only hindrance that I find working here in Nigeria is, of course, the numbers, and so that, of course, production, we're unable to meet up with the numbers, which is why we have to then resort to production outside of Nigeria. But of course, I will always, for all my collections, every single piece is made here, and as many possible pieces from my collection, or even when we have orders, I try to keep it here. But when the numbers get too much, then I take it outside of Nigeria.
So we're going to hop over to a few more Twitter questions and comments. Let's see. So Alicia Fusini, Twitter handle is @BellaBlogging. Thank you so much for joining in on the discussion and for your thoughts. Now, Alicia is an ex-designer, and she says, as an ex-designer, I believe there is always a way to reinvent the past or traditions. And, you know, I think that fits beautifully into what our panelists are discussing today. So thank you so much for sharing that, Alicia. Let's see. Now we've got... Now, I just want to skip over to Fashion Spaz. So we've got a good dialogue going on between Fayshax and Fashion Spaz. So Fayshax commented, you know, African designers should explore new ways of creating African prints, and she feels as though sometimes it's a bit overdone or over-recycled. Now, Fayshax jumped in, said that's a great observation, and what she wants to know is, what do you think it will lead to if new African prints are not created? So perhaps Loza or Lisa, do either of you have an opinion on that? Since Lisa, you create African prints, and Loza, you use traditional prints in a contemporary manner.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind repeating that, the question, what they're asking? I didn't hear it.
Oh, absolutely. So Fayshax commented that African designers need to find a new way of creating with African prints. She feels as though sometimes it's a bit overly done or overly recycled, so we often might see the same things over and over. And Fashion Spaz then commented, said it's a great observation, and she asked, what do you think it will lead to if we're not recreating with African prints? So if we're still using the same prints or, you know, the same silhouettes, and we're not pushing the boundaries?
Well, if I could, for me, I think that maybe this is one of the reasons why I decided to make my own custom prints. And of course, for me, they're still African-inspired prints. So maybe because, yes, indeed, you know, the African wax, the Ankara or whatever is common in Africa as a fabric that we use. Maybe we see too much of it, or we see the same prints even on the runways. And I think that, yes, indeed, as designers, because you are supposed to be influencing fashion and having a say, then of course it's about you taking it to the next level, thinking outside of the box, being as current as possible. And I think that, I don't know, maybe for me it's just using, creating your prints, which is what I've done. And if there is another way, form, then maybe. But for now, I create my own African-inspired prints, and I still work with the Ankara fabric that I've always worked with, because I think that they're just new ways of doing things, and making these things into beautiful, beautiful pieces of clothing. So that's my answer.
Yeah. And so we're getting close to the end of our session, but we've got one great question, which I think pretty much sums up what you guys do and what we're discussing today. And this is coming from Laura E. Her Twitter handle is Leyuja. And she says, how do you envision your brand evolving? In other words, how do you go from creating a brand that's global and has some mainstream visibility, but without compromising the local essence or the local culture that you're infusing within? So any last thoughts on that from each of you? I'm going to start with you, Liza. Oops, and we've lost Loza, so I'm going to go over to you, Jacqueline. How are you guys going about building a global brand? And you can definitely speak highly on this. How do you build a global brand without losing that local essence or connection?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's really everything it's a broad sort of question that really answers everything we've been discussing today. It's design, it's being current in your design, it's good quality. It's telling the story of where the products come from and who the people are that make it. I think all those things need to be remembered in order for future success and longevity.
Absolutely. Loza, were you about to say anything before we lost you?
I was asking about the question again. What was the question?
Oh, sure. The question was, how do you build a global brand or a brand that has some global recognition while still staying true to your local culture or essence?
Oh, I mean, for me, it would be simply to just get up and go to the market and walk down the street and stay connected with the actual culture. It's the only way to keep your roots where they belong, and to be able to step out of that also and see what's current on the global world, on the international level, and be able to mix those two together. I think you have to kind of have a foot set in both worlds.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. Very nice answer.
Yeah.
And let's see if you have any last thoughts, and then we're going to round this up, Lisa.
Yeah, I think they said it perfectly. I think that it definitely is, for me anyway, keeping it true to who I am, staying inspired by what inspires me, which is Africa, Nigeria, and also paying attention to what's happening outside of Africa in the international fashion industries. And the lady from Mayet talked about quality. I think that is very important. I think fashion on a global front, quality is key. And I think also people understanding that it is all here. It's all handcrafted, and it's coming from here. And I think for me, that's what's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, thank you so much. For anyone who
Thank you.
missed the beginning or any parts of the conversation, there were certain key things that were just reiterated throughout. And I think those are really our takeaways when we speak about how to design for a global consumer using local traditions. The one thing that everyone said is it all starts with good design. Good design is number one. A good story, that story is conveyed through transparency, and each of these designers are very transparent in their action. And what better way to be transparent than through social and new media? LM Creative documents her journey through her blog. Lisa Fullario has produced beautiful fashion shoots that have gone viral via Twitter, via just pushing out her lookbooks to blog, via Tumblr. And she's also really kind of pioneered the fashion films within our niche as well. And Mayet as well. Mayet is a very visual company, and they are always showing us where they're producing, how they're producing, and what the story is through their films. So transparency, good design, tell a story through that design, introduce us to who's making your product. And I love what you said, Loza. It's about having one foot on the ground locally, but also having one foot outside as well, because you have to stay connected to your local culture, but you need to also understand the global movement and what's moving a global consumer. So thank you. I thank all of you from Nigeria to Abidjan to right here in New York. And thank you so much to all of our Twitter followers as well. This was an amazing conversation. It's day one. We've got 4 more days to go with designers, entrepreneurs, the makers, you name it. These are the change agents who are moving fashion Africa globally, on the continent, in the diaspora, as well as all of you who are out there on Twitter. So please stay tuned. Come back to us tomorrow, same time, same place. And I think we've worked the kinks out, so I'm confident that we'll have a smooth, smooth start tomorrow. Thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
Have a good one. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.